Welcome to the Compass e-learning series. This session will cover how to create custom reports with the Excel add-in for Compass. If you need help with the specific templates, like the liquidity report, please call Compass support at 800-323-3281. Before we get started, here are some things to consider as you use this tutorial. If you'd like to practice as you view the tutorial, start by clicking the Restore Down button in the upper right-hand corner of the tutorial window. Resize the tutorial window to cover about half of the horizontal area of the screen, and then if necessary, use the drag bar at the top of the tutorial window by holding and clicking and move the window to the right-hand side of your screen. Next, you may want to pause the tutorial, move the cursor to the lower left-hand corner of the tutorial window, and the tutorial navigation bar should appear. Just click the pause button. Now let's open Excel. If necessary, click the Restore Down button in the Excel window, then resize the Excel window so that it fits in the space to the left of the tutorial window without overlapping that window. Going back to the tutorial window, you notice that there's a Table of Contents button in the tutorial navigation bar. When you click this button, an interactive table of contents will appear on the left-hand side of the tutorial window. You can select any topic in this list, and playback will move to the start of that topic. To hide the table of contents, click the Table of Contents button once again. This table of contents makes it really easy to repeat any section of the tutorial as you're viewing it, or to revisit a particular section of the presentation when you come back at a later time. Prior to using the features described in this presentation, the add-in must be installed on your computer. If you need help with that, please refer to the Compass Online User Manual or call Compass Support. The Excel add-in is a program created by PlanSmith to create special commands and features for accessing Compass data directly from an Excel workbook. Before you open or create a new spreadsheet that will use the add-in, be sure that no one is using any Compass Plan or RateWorks file that would provide data for that spreadsheet. If anyone opens or closes a Compass file while it is being used by an open spreadsheet and the add-in, data loss could result. The first step in creating a spreadsheet using the add-in is to create a link to the Compass plan or plans that you want to use for the data. You can follow this process on a new workbook or an existing workbook that you want to automate with the add-in. The instructions that follow are based on the 2016 version of Excel. If you're using another version and you notice a difference, please call Compass Support. Start with the actual spreadsheet. First, select Add-ins from the Excel Quick Access menu at the top of the screen. Next, click Compass in the Menu Commands box. If you don't see Compass, call the support line for help. Once you've clicked the Compass box, you'll have a menu where you can select Build or Edit Plan List. Click Yes when you see the Create Sheet box. Once you click Yes, the add-in will create a new spreadsheet in the open workbook called Compass Plans, and it will automatically open a Plan List dialog box. On that dialog box, click Add or Replace, and a file selection box will open that will allow you to browse for the Compass file that you want to use. When you do that, the Plan List box will show the path for the file that you select, and you can add up to 99 additional Compass plans. These could be for additional branches or departments if your institution is using the SBU version of Compass, or it could just be other plans with different scenarios or different what-ifs, like best case or worst case projections. Now, if you want to use data from more than one Compass plan, just click in the space to the right of the next line number, and the blue highlight will move to that row. Then click the Add Replace button and locate the next Compass file that you want to add to the list. These additional plans are usually visible in the Select Plan box that appears, but you may need to browse other folders or network drives for plans that are located in different places on your network. You can repeat this process as many times as you need until you have all the files that you want to use, and you can list up to 99 different plans at once. You don't necessarily have to use all of these plans in any specific worksheet. When you have all the plans that you want, click the OK button, and then we're ready to start creating a report. Let's start with the basics of using the add-in in a single spreadsheet cell. Later we'll discuss some specific shortcuts that allow you to create ranges of cells all at one time in a simple process. The first step is to use what's called the data wizard. This data wizard is designed to simplify the process of creating the various parts or arguments in the custom formulas or functions that are available to bring data from Compass plans or MDB files into the Excel spreadsheets. We start by activating any cell in a spreadsheet by clicking on it. In this case, we'll choose cell A1. Click on the Compass in the menu commands box, and then click on Data Wizard. The Data Wizard box will appear, and you'll notice that the first box is called Data Reference. This is the first argument in the special function code that pulls Compass data in Excel. We recommend that all arguments be entered as a reference to another spreadsheet cell rather than typing the actual code in the Data Wizard box. There are two reasons why it's better to do this. First, the add-in will let you select from a menu of available codes to place in the cell, so you don't have to try to remember them all. And second, using cell references just makes it easier to copy cells when you're constructing larger reports. The first thing we'll do is just enter a datum item code on our worksheet. To do that, we activate the cell that we want to use for the code. And in this example, we're going to use cell A3. It could be any cell though, it's no magic to A3. By the way, if the cell you want to use is covered by the Data Wizard box, you can click and hold anywhere in this top bar and just move it out of the way so you can enter the cell you want. Whenever a cell is activated, the cell path is automatically entered in the active Data Wizard box, along with $signs before the column letter and the row number. We'll talk about how these $signs can be useful later on in the presentation. Now that we have the cell highlighted that we want to use for data reference, we can go up to the Compass menu and choose Data Item List to get the type of data we need. You'll notice there are lots of categories here, but very often we want the top category, which contains the account information, balances, and so forth. If we double-click that category, we'll have a wide array of different numbers to choose from. What we want is end-of-month balance. These entries are in alphabetical order, so we can scroll down until we see end-of-month balance. Click that. Make sure that the Substitute Descriptors box is checked, and then we can click either Assign Down or Assign Across. It doesn't really matter because we're only using a single cell here. However, when we click the Assign Down, the active cell moves down. When we click the Done button, we'll see that the data reference has changed to A4. We actually want that data reference to be on the cell above A3, so we'll simply click on that cell and restore that to the appropriate value. You may have also noticed that the descriptions on the remaining boxes have been updated to reflect the type of data reference that we're referring to in the data reference code. So let's take a look at the remaining part of the Data Wizard box. The line below the data reference includes a choice of monthly value, year-to-date, or year-to-date average. This allows you to select the term of the data that we're choosing. In our case, we want the monthly value, which is the default, so we can simply leave that selected. We could type a date right in this box, but it's preferable to put that date in a cell. So let's select cell A4, and you'll notice our reference appears in the wizard, and we can just type a date in at this point. A little later on, we'll show you some other options for automating these date entries, but for right now, I'll use one of the simplest of the options for Excel for the date, and I want to put in the year-end data for 2019. That's registered, but again, I've got the problem with that cell reference going down one notch, so let me go back and reestablish the correct cell reference. Next, we're ready for the category or account reference. We'll click on the category account reference box to activate it, but again, rather than typing the code in right in the box, I'll go over to cell A5 and activate that. Compass account numbers are quite different than the general ledger numbers that are used in most accounting systems. The Compass account numbers consist of both letters and numbers, and they may not be in the same order as they would appear in a typical chart of accounts or in financial statements. Many of them are standard for all of our Compass clients and plans. Some of them are created by Compass when new categories or accounts are added by the client. In that case, they may not be the same for every institution or even for every Compass plan used by an institution if the chart of the accounts was not changed in all copies of the plan. Because of these issues, it's better to use another add-in tool to actually look up the category account reference rather than trying to remember what it might be. With cell 5 still active, we go up to the Compass menu and select Category Account List. Here you'll see the standard financial statement sections. In this case, we're going to be looking for total loans. That's part of the balance sheet, so we'll double-click that. It's part of assets, so we'll expand that. And there's loans. Now, we could expand loans and see all the types of loans, but for now, we'll just select this folder since we want the total loans, not the individual details. Again, I click the Assign button, and click the Done button, and I have my usual problem of the cell reference having moved, so let's just reestablish that on A5, and we're in good shape. Now the only thing left is the plan reference. In this case, I'm going to violate my own rule about using the wizard box rather than a cell reference, because this is such a simple argument. The plan number allows you to choose between those different Compass plans in the Compass plan list. You may only have one plan in the list, in which case you're always choosing plan number 1, and that's the case here. So we can just keep it simple by typing a 1 in the plan box. Let's pause now and take a quick look at where the data wizard is getting the information that it needs. The data reference is coming from cell A3. In this case, that's the code D-1002, which stands for end of month balance. The date is coming from cell A4. That's December 31st, 2019, the date that we typed right in the cell. And the category account reference is coming from cell A5, and that's the code C-AAD, which is the Compass code for total loans. And finally, the plan number is just the number 1. So we're all set, and when we click the OK button, you'll see the value appears in cell A1. In fact, if you click on the cell, in your formula bar, you can see the formula that the wizard created. Let's take a closer look at this formula that was created by our wizard. This is the most common type of formula used by the Excel add-in, but there are a lot of other types, and we'll review some of those later in the session. Once you have this format, you can change it without even opening the wizard. You just need to know the use of each of these arguments and the cell reference or value of the data that you want to put in. So let's go through a breakdown of the way this formula appears in Excel. The first part of the breakdown is the function name. Now again, there are a variety of different functions that have been created for different types of data that can be pulled from the Financial Compass database. These are unique to the Excel add-in and don't correspond to the functions typically available in Excel. Then there's a set of parentheses, and between those we have a series of 4 arguments separated by commas. The first argument in this function is the data type. You might be surprised to learn that there are several hundred types of data that are available to you from Compass, and that means several hundred codes that are way too difficult to memorize. But remember, you can use that tool in the add-in to browse the total list of the codes to find what you're looking for. These are listed in the Compass manual in Appendix C in pages 244 and 245. You can also get a list of them, of course, again by using the add-in menu command, Data Item List. Data type codes for the CMP data value argument usually start with the letter D, then a dash, then 4 numbers. Common examples are EOM balance, that's the D-1002 that we used in our example. Average balance is D-1001, and another example is total maturities, that's D-1034. Just remember to enter a cell reference in the formula and put the actual code in the cell that you referenced. The next argument is the date. Excel is able to automatically convert several different formats to the serial number format it actually uses. We recommend that you use a cell reference here as well and just put a date in that cell. Later, we'll show you how to replace a manually entered date with a formula that will automatically change the date when you download each month in Compass. The next argument is the account. Remember that Compass account numbers are tricky because they're alphanumeric and they may not be in the same order as they appear in your bank's chart of accounts, and they're different between Compass plans. Many of the major category account numbers are standard for all Compass users, but there can be exceptions even to that. Therefore, it's always safest to use the Addin command category account list to get this number. We'll show you how you can easily do this to get single numbers or even a complete list for your entire chart of accounts with a few easy keystrokes. Moving on to the next argument, the plan number. This one's pretty easy. Again, it is the plan number from the Compass Plans worksheet that you want to access. If you only have one plan in that worksheet, which is perfectly fine for a lot of cases, that'll always be number 1. But if you want to use several plans to compare scenarios or different what-ifs that are stored in separate plans, or branches or other units in a multi-bank consolidation, then those row numbers can be very, very handy, and you may end up with an array of them across some cells rather than just one. We'll show you how to do that later on in the presentation as well. But before we look at these great shortcuts and some other valuable data functions, let's review the rules for manually editing the Compass data value function. First of all, the formula will always start with the function name. In this case, it's equal CMP data value, open parentheses. Secondly, remember that the arguments must be included in the correct order, and you must use the full number of arguments required by the particular functions. Compass data value requires 4 arguments, but some require as few as 1 argument. Arguments should be an Excel cell reference rather than the value itself. And remember that arguments are separated by a comma, and the last argument is followed by the closing parentheses. Any error, no matter how small, can cause the function to malfunction. But if you follow the rules, it's simple and it works every time. All right, well, let's have some fun. Here are some shortcuts for quickly creating complete reports. Let's use a fresh spreadsheet tab. We'll rename it Balance Sheet. Next, we'll put the data item code for end-of-month balance in cell A1. Remember that data item code was D-1002. Now we'll bring all of the account names into Compass in just a few steps. We'll start over in cell A5 to allow some room for headings on our report. And now we're going to select Category Account List from our Compass Wizard menu. And we'll click on Balance Sheet. But rather than just doing a selected category or account, we can click on all subcategories and accounts, and we'll leave substitute descriptors so that we'll get the Compass account numbers rather than the descriptions themselves in this first step. Now I'll select Assign Down, and immediately I have the account numbers for every single account in my Compass chart of accounts. That was easy. Next, we move to cell B5, and this time we unchecked substitute descriptors, but we check indent levels. And this way, when I click Assign, I will have all of my descriptors, and they will automatically be indented to reflect the totals and subtotals in all the different levels that we have set up in our Compass system. Of course, you can change these column headings here and condense the indentations a little bit to let it take up a little bit less space. Perhaps expand column F to make sure that the descriptions are all visible. So now we've got the account numbers, the account description. Well, we need the actual numbers. Now first we need to specify a report date. Let's put that in cell G3. I'll just use that same date of 12/31/19. So let's just type in manually that Compass code to get our balances in. It's equal CMP DATA VALUE open parentheses. Now we need our first argument. The first argument is the data type. Remember, we have that up in cell A1. So if I activate cell A1, that'll bring that in. I put a comma after the first argument. The second argument is the date. The date is right here. There's G3. The third argument is the account number. The account number for total assets, the line that I'm on, is right there. And finally, we want the plan number. We've said we can use a 1 there. So I've got the formula. Let's talk about those dollar signs. I didn't put any dollar signs in here. The first argument, the data type, is going to be the same for every row and column where I want these numbers in my spreadsheet. So I'm going to freeze both the column letter and the row number with the dollar sign. The second argument is the date. And in case of the date, I always want it to come from line 3 so it will stay the same as we go down the page in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to freeze the row number on 3. I'm going to leave the dollar sign off of G though, so if I go into column H, I could put another date in H, and I could have side-by-side numbers in G and H that would be 2 different dates. Pretty sneaky, huh? The third argument is the account number. Well, the account numbers are always in column A the way I set this up, but I want them to change as we go down the page so that on my next row, it'll be row 6, so cash and due will automatically pick up that C-AAA, which is the compass code for cash and due from. No dollar sign next to the 5. And the 1 is just a 1, so it can stay the same. So if I hit the Enter key, there's my total assets. Now I might want to reformat this so that it's easier to read. We go to Format Cells here and just choose Currency. And I would suggest leaving out the decimal points here since these values are in thousands. And there we go. Here's the great thing. I can copy this cell by either using a copy and paste command or even just dragging this down the page from the drag bar here. Hit the Enter key, and now I have all of the values. Pretty slick. Now, of course, you may want to format this by inserting some spaces between these categories and moving the totals from the top down to the bottom by adding some total lines, by inserting lines and so forth. So you can easily reformat this. Here's another trick. Compass always reports balance sheet items in thousands, but Compass actually stores data out to the penny. You can reformat these cells by multiplying times 1,000 to get it from thousands into dollars, and then you can actually see the pennies by changing the format again to show 2 decimal places. Bet you never knew that was there. I'm going to go ahead and reset that back. Remember before I promised that I'd show you a way to automate this date so it would always bring the report to the current Compass update? Let's see how we do that next. To automate the date, we actually use 2 functions. The first function is an Excel function called EOMonth. EOMonth takes any date in Excel and converts it to the last day of the month. Compass always records the dates as the 28th, but for a report, of course, you want to show the actual date. So using the EOMonth function will automatically return a 30 for 30-day months, a 31 for 31-day months, and a 28 or 29 for February. Yes, it even knows about leap year. The Compass function, CMP last update, will return that date for the last time you updated the plan. Let's look at the 2 arguments involved in this formula. The first argument here is the Compass plan number. Remember, that's the row number from the Compass plan list on that special page in the workbook. Again, if you only have one plan, it's always going to be the 1. The next argument is the offset. This argument actually works with the EOMonth function. That allows you to specify a number of months before or after the last Compass update. For example, if you wanted to have a report date from a year before the last update, you could put -12 rather than 0. Or if you wanted to have it a year after, +12. Just put 12. You don't need the plus sign. If you wanted to have last month, that would be -1. So you can really do a lot once you have this formula built in, and you can copy it and change those. Let's see now how we can create a report with two columns, one column for the current year and another column for last year. Let's replace the date with this formula of ours. Again, that's equal EOMONTH, open parentheses, CMP LASTUPDATE, open parentheses, quotation mark 1, close quotation mark, close parentheses, comma, 0, close parentheses. There's our date. Well, it did change it. That's because the plan we're using was only updated through August. So it changed all the numbers immediately. Now let's go to column H, copy the same formula. So we'll just do a copy here and go over here and do a paste and go into this formula and edit it and change the offset to -12. We get a year ago. Now we can copy the formula for all of our numbers into the next column over. And just like that, we have a comparison of this year and last year. So again, once you get familiar with a few of these little shortcuts, it's amazing how quickly you can create and manipulate reports in the Excel add-in. The key is using those constants, $signs before column letters and/or row numbers. Once you set your formulas up with the appropriate constants, you can create all kinds of multi-column reports very, very easily. Let's look at one more example, side-by-side reports for several different branches. We'll open another spreadsheet from an SBU plan or Strategic Business Unit plan for a bank that has 3 branches. In this case, it's branch 1, 2, 3, and those happen to be on Compass plan lines 1, 2, and 3. That makes it easy, but we'll show you in a minute how to get around that in the normal case where the branch names don't have any relationship at all to the line numbers. For now, we're going to go back to the balance sheet. This is set up exactly like our last balance sheet. So we created the data item code for end of month balance in the same cell A1. We created the account numbers down the rest of column A starting at row 5, and of course we got the descriptions in here. And the date is in the same place. It happens to be in G3, and we've got that same formula so that it will automatically change. But instead of having columns with different dates, now we're going to have columns with different branches. These happen to be the line numbers. If you wanted to put branch names on this row so they appear in the printed report, you could do that. Just put the line numbers up here on the first row outside of the range of the report you're printing. In fact, we'll actually set it up to read those cells rather than these branch name cells right here that are going to be in the printed area. We're going to use the same formula that we started with on our other spreadsheet. So this is that same formula. Here's the trick. In this setup, we want to keep the same date for the entire report. So we want to freeze the date column so that it doesn't change as we go to other columns. We'll put the constant in front of the G for the date argument. The difference is, though, that we don't want to use the same plan number because plan number 1 is branch 1. We want that to change. We can put in a cell reference instead of that argument, and if we do that, we use this row right here, but we want to freeze the row number so that when we go down the page, it will keep the reference on row number 1. So we're going to change it when we go across columns here, but freeze it when we go down. Now we can copy this cell across the entire range of branches and entire range of accounts, all in one easy process, and immediately I have a branch report. Now let's take a look at some pointers for building income statement reports. Income statements include data from 3 different areas in the Compass chart of accounts. Unlike traditional accounting systems, Compass uses the same account numbers for both balance sheet balances and income or expense balances. And income tax balances are located in another area of the database. This structure allows Compass to efficiently process calculations and facilitates its ability to show both balances and interest income at the same time. But it does make the process of building an income statement just a little bit more complicated. Here's how to combine the 3 different elements that you need to get a complete income statement. We've created a new spreadsheet tab and labeled it Income Statement. The first thing that we'll do is enter the data item code for income in cell A1. You could use the data item list under the compass item in the menu commands box to get this code, but since we know it's D-1011, we'll just enter that in cell A1. Now we'll also enter a date. Again, we'll use cell G3 for that, and the date that we'll use will just be 12/31/19 for now. Next, we will import the chart of accounts and account descriptors. But for an income statement, this will require 3 separate steps. One for interest income and expense, one for non-interest income and expense, and one for income taxes, if your institution is liable for those. First, we'll activate cell A5. Then we'll select Category Account List from the Compass Add-in Menus command box. Once the account category list box appears, we'll select Balance Sheet, and we'll choose All Subcategories and Accounts, and verify that Substitute Descriptors is checked. Then we click Assign Down, and we have our account numbers. Next, we'll go to cell B5 and activate that, and since the account category list box is still showing, we can just deselect Substitute Descriptors, but select Indent Levels. Again, we assign down, and we have our descriptions. Now we'll go back to column A and select Income Statement. Again, we'll select All Subcategories Account, and this time we do want the descriptors, and we don't want the indentations, and we click Assign Down. Moving back up the page to the first section of non-interest income and expense, and we'll change the selection to not substitute the descriptors, but to indent the levels and assign down, and now we have our descriptions. Again, we go back to column A. This time, we may want to skip several rows to allow some space for some subtotals that we want to include in our final format, and we want to enter the code for taxes. The trick here is that income taxes are not assigned a category account code. Instead, you access them with the data item code. So we'll click the Done box on the account category list, and then we'll choose from the Compass menu the data item list. The second item in the data item list box is tax data. That's what we want. And we want the descriptors. There they are. Now we want to get the names for taxes, so we go to column B or C, turn off the substitute descriptor boxes, and we can see that T-4001 is the code for federal taxes, T-4002 is for state taxes. Well, now we need to bring in the balances. So let's get rid of our Compute Summary Tax List and go back up to the top of column G. We'll go next to Total Assets, and now we need to build our formula. For income statements, if you want data for just the month, the function name is the same that we use for the balance sheet examples. That function name is equals CMP data value. If you want year-to-date totals, however, the function date's a little longer. It's equal CMP data value YTD sum. For now, we'll just use the function we're used to, equal CMP data value. And the arguments are virtually identical to the arguments that we've been used to using. We get the data type code, is cell A1, the date, cell G3, the category account, cell A5, and the number 1 for the first plan in the list. Before copying this, however, let's insert the constants so that we will freeze both the column and the row for the data item code. We'll freeze the row only for the date, and we'll freeze the column only for the category account number. Well, I have good news and bad news. This formula can be copied for almost the entire chart. In other words, it will work from the interest, income, and expense coming from the balance sheet categories, and it will also work for the non-interest income and expense. However, as you'll see here, if I copy that same formula for the taxes, I get 0 for taxes. And that's because a different function is needed to get those tax numbers from Compass. Let's use the account wizard and it'll guide us through the process of recovering these tax numbers. We'll choose Data Wizard, and the data reference is, again, this T-4001 for federal taxes. We want the monthly value, so that's fine. And now we want the date. That date is in cell G, and we want the $sign to freeze the row on row 3. Now we've got something new here. Instead of having the category account, we're now asked for the Proj Budget Ref. That stands for projections or budget reference. When we activate this box, we'll see a handy note down here that will remind us of the 2 codes that we can use here. Projected data in Compass actually consists of historic monthly data plus reprojected data through the remaining time horizon of the Compass, compared to the budget data, which is the data that was locked in the budget section of the database. In this case, we're looking for actual and projected data, and so we want to use a 0, and we could just type a 0 in the projected budget reference. We can also use plan number 1 here. That's the same, and so we're ready to go, and now we see the amount of federal taxes for the month. We're ready to copy this into state tax, but we need to be careful about the constant setup because we want to be able to let this row number change from row 310 to 311. So we remove the constant in front of the row number, and now we can just drag our box here and copy it, and there's our state taxes. All that's left now is to add our rows for totals and subtotals. Now here's a tip for checking accuracy. As you construct the totals and subtotals, you can use Excel formulas to get those totals or subtotals by adding or subtracting the appropriate rows. Remember that at the top of these categories, I'll give you an example here of other expense. You don't really want the total for other expense here, but you can just cut this and move it over to where you're going to put your total. And that amount can compare to the formula that you wrote, which should be the equivalent number. In this case, they are. We're in good shape. If those numbers don't agree, it means that either this formula wasn't quite right or something was left out in the details here. It can be really helpful to eliminate errors from your report. There are many other options, in fact, unlimited possibilities for creating reports with the Excel add-in. We know that this can seem complicated at first, but we also know that with a little practice it really becomes easy and powerful to create these automated reports. And the beauty is, once you've created them, they automatically update themselves without any data input. There are 3 sources for additional help. First, there's an excellent section of the Compass Online Manual that covers the add-in. You can access the manual to review, or save it as a PDF file, or print it out. Just choose Online User Manual from the Help section in Compass. The add-in section is found in Appendix C toward the back of the manual, and if you wanted to print just it, select Print and choose pages 232 through 246. Cost of telephone support for questions about the add-in are covered in the licensing fee you're already paying for the add-in feature. However, this support does not include assistance with Excel functions beyond the add-in itself, nor does it include detailed assistance for the actual construction of custom reports and graphs. If you need help with any of that, give our Compass professionals a call. They'll be happy to discuss the timing and cost of providing whatever you need. Thank you for taking the time to look and for being a PlanSmith client.